Hello and welcome everybody to another webinar of the EAC, the European Action Coalition for the Right to Housing and to the City. We are a network of grassroots collectives from all over Europe, about 35 collectives from 20 different countries and almost 10 years organizing together. Our last webinar was about the MIPIM, the biggest real estate fair in Cannes. And today, again, we return to France and will speak and learn about the law, the so-called KASBARIAN law or anti-squat law. And I remember well when this initiative was firstly launched in November, I think our comrades from France were asking around if something similar exists anywhere in Europe, and everybody was answering no. And not only no, but what the fuck, because we know very well if this kind of laws are implemented in one country, it's probable that it will be implemented in other countries too. That's why we are very concerned. And that's why also we called for this week. The law will be finally voted in the French National Embassy next week. And we call for a week of actions in solidarity with our French comrades and against this law. And because it's an unprecedented example of criminalization of squatters and tenants, and also, as we will learn later, of workers. And yes, we have a fantastic guest and comrades here speaking. I will not take a lot of time, and we will start with a general frame of the subject with Stella from DAL, a group that is a member from the beginning in the coalition, Droit au Logement, Right to Housing. And please do your speech now.
Okay, so hello everybody, and thanks Jan for the presentation. And also I would like to thank all the groups that are taking solidarity actions with us in France and against the law. For us, it's very important to have this support, and also I think that it's very important to warn the public opinion in other countries and to prevent the law from becoming a model for other European countries. So yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, like we are waiting for the actions in the week to come. So I won't go into the details of the law because Matteo, who will speak later, will analyze it perfectly. He is a lawyer and he's following a lot this question and also the repression against squats in France. But maybe I will say a few words about the general context in which the law was proposed. First, the law was presented last year in November in the National Assembly. The deputies, it was proposed from two deputies of the majority, and they were backed by the right and the far right. So the person who proposed it, KASBARIAN, he's not just anyone. He has always been an advocate of rental profit and in the housing market and in general, and also of big landlords. So yeah, it's like a well-known figure about that. Before the law became known for the public opinion, it was preceded by a year of very virulent campaign targeting squatters who occupy principal residences of small owners. At least that's how it was presented. So there were a lot of cases presented in the media. Yeah, and like most of them were distorted or I don't know, exaggerated. And afterwards, when we went a bit more into details, we understood that it wasn't always the case of small owners, but sometimes it was big landlords or whatever. Anyway, so it was before being presented, there was a very big campaign in the media. What to say after? So yeah, so basically the law is presented as a law that will protect small owners from being how to say, occupied from squatters. which is totally untrue, because as we will see later, his target is way bigger and wider. So it is targeting poor tenants who can't pay their rent and they have eviction orders. It started getting also workers that can occupy workplaces during strikes. So yeah, we will see into details. Anyways, it's not about a law that is just protecting the small land, the small owners. Also, this is untrue because in France already exists laws that exist sanctions and laws against the occupation of first residential houses. What to say else? It's also important to recall the general context in which the law was proposed. So first of all, it was just after the COVID crisis, in a period of rising inflation of basic needs and rising housing rents and electricity bills, and a large number of people struggling to pay their rent and increasing rental debts, and like in all this situation. It was also proposed in a very particular political context. From some years now in France, we see strong repression, state repression, and police repression of the demonstrations, but in general, like unprecedented repression and attacks on political rights and social rights, like the reform on the pensions, or attacking immigrant rights at the same time that this law was proposed, and budget cuts on social assistance, and this was the whole context, and this was also why one of the main reasons that it was difficult to mobilize, especially in this topic, and it's still an obstacle for us to make it, to make it a very important topic of the movement and to mobilize a lot of people. But maybe Ellie, who is also part of the unions, could speak about that and about the movement in general, and how we are dealing with resistance against this law. Anyway, some actions has been done, and we managed to create some attention on this law. First of all, with DAL and other organization movements from the squads, but also some unions, we occupied the space in front of the National Assembly during the discussions, the first discussion of the law in November 2022. And after, we did a big demonstration on December. And yes, and now we are trying also to spread the information during the movement against the reform on the retreats, which was a very big movement, and for sure everybody has heard about it. The topic of housing was also raised, and it's very something that concerns everybody, and people speak about it, but still it was difficult to mobilize precisely against this law. And just I will finish with some latest, proposals of the government. 2 days ago, the government decided to raise again the housing prices and rental prices by 3.5% for this year, which could reach up to 6%. We will see, which is totally very, very high. Also, 6 months ago, because it was sure, like from everybody, it was obvious that a housing crisis is going on. The government said that they will deal with the housing crisis and proposed a kind of consultation between public actors and also private actors, real estate actors and investors, but also the civil society mobilized on the housing topic. So we had the results of this consult 2 days ago, and it's more than deceiving. It's very, very bad. So nothing is done to really tackle the housing crisis. they are really small measures proposed, and mainly we have the feeling that the government is trying to help more like the private sector and investors and the real estate actors who can't pay their housing stock. And it's nothing is being done for people who are struggling. Also because we have to say it, in this moment there we have here, and maybe also like in other places, not only housing crisis, but a real estate market crisis going on. So yeah, so this is the general situation, and so I will invite Matteo to go into details and speak about the law.
Sorry, Matteo, 1 second. I forgot in the beginning to say we decided with the comrades, the speakers, that if you have questions, even if it's for clarification, please note them. We will have first all the inputs and after go into the discussion. I forgot this to say before.
Yes, and I forgot also to say something, sorry. So we were supposed to be for today, and there was also a comrade from the squat movement who wanted to participate in the webinar. But she didn't manage to come, also because they are getting evicted in this moment, so it was very complicated. So we send a lot of solidarity to her, and Matteo, he could be able to speak about the repression against the squat, because he's following a lot of cases of eviction of squats in France.
My turn. Hi. So my name is Matteo Bonaglia. I'm a lawyer in Paris, and with two main fields of expertise, housing and criminal law. And I try to do my best with a really petty English, so please excuse me for this English. If there is any question I can answer after my very small and quick talk, I will be pleased to do so. So let me quickly introduce this new law, because there is two main parts in this new law, but you need to put them in the right order to understand the logic behind this law. And my proposal is to begin with the second part of the law, which is related to the securitization, to secure the rental relationship. And I guess you understand this securitization is only on the benefit of the owner and not of the occupant. And the first part is related to the action, to the fight against the squat. So this second part of the law, which aims to liberalize the rental housing market, with this law, housing is increasingly becoming a merchandise, a commodity like any other. In other words, if you can pay your rent, you will have to be put out on the street as quickly as possible, so that landlords can quickly rent out their properties again, thereby maximizing the value of their property. This means speeding up the eviction proceeding. The court hearings are shorter, and the social investigation investigators have less time to inform the judge of the tenant's situation, of the situation of the occupant. It also means that the judge powers have been reduced, and particularly when it comes to setting up a schedule to pay off the debt while keeping the tenant in the house. Lastly, it also means a reduction in the deadlines that can be granted to the evicted occupant before he or she can be put back out on the streets. These delay are divided by 3, and if the judge considers that the evicted tenant is acting in bad faith, he or she may not grant any time. However, as this situation will for sure lead to an ever increasing number of rough sleeper people on the street, Government also thoughts on how to manage the consequences of this law, because they will probably have to deal with it in the following months and following years. And this is the real purpose, but this is my own opinion, but the real purpose of the first part of this proposed law, new law. There is several aspects on this first part of the law. Firstly, the evicted tenants who fail to put himself on the street when the eviction proceeding is finished. If he don't put himself on the street, he will have to face a fine that can be up to 7,500 euros. So the people who face money trouble, who cannot pay the rent, and who are victim of an eviction proceeding, at the very end of the proceeding, they face two main risks. The first one is that the police came to bring the occupant on the street, but he also have to face prosecution, and he will probably have to pay at the very end of the criminal proceeding a fine, and a huge fine, because 7,000 euro when you have absolutely no money and you cannot pay your rent, it's something horrible, and that can only push people to more and more financial problem, money problem. And that's the way that the lawmaker think about the problem of the housing. Someone who cannot pay the rent, the only way government think about that is that he will have to face a prosecution, and at the very end he will have to pay a fine. So there is this first problem, and secondly, squatting. But when it comes to squat in France, we have to be clear about what does it mean. It's the occupation of an empty building or apartment, which until now was not punishable by law, and it will become punishable by law with this new KASBARIAN law, and it will be punishable by 2 years of imprisonment and a fine up to 30,000 euro. What I want to be clear about that, it's French law already know an offense of violation of domicile, we say in French. I mean, it's an help of someone to translate that, because when you go on the house of someone else, the place where he lives, this is already an offense. And we can, I think, understand that if I want to come back to my flat and my apartment tonight, and if someone is already in my apartment, it's also a breach of my intimacy. And in my opinion, I understand French law can prohibit such kind of behavior. But up to now, French law didn't know an offense when someone go inside of a free building, an empty building, and when he actually only looks for a place to sit, to stay for the night, and to have something above his head, and especially during the fresh period of the years. So up to now we didn't knew any offense for such kind of behavior, and with this new law, if the prosecution can prove that to enter an empty place, people has to break the door, to go through a wall, to do something positive, to go inside of the empty building. In such a situation, the people who did that will probably be prosecuted and up to 2 years of prison. Finally, there is also a last offense proposed by the lawmaker, and it's related to the help that association can offer to people in squat situation. For instance, Droit au Logement in France offer advice to people facing an eviction proceeding because they are squatting an empty building. For this kind of activity of the association, to offer advice people who are squatting empty building, the association will probably also have to face prosecution because a new offense and punished by 7,500 euro, the activity of association giving help and advice to people looking for a place to rest and practicing squat activities. So the creation of a criminal offense to punish squatting is problematic. I think it's problematic, in my opinion, in the principle, but it will also offer to police force a legal basis to carry out eviction that are completely illegal. Because if there is in the French law a new offense of squatting, it will offer the possibility to the police to come to take the squatter, arrest the occupant, take them in custody, and while the time of the custody, they will return the building to the owner, and thereby they will deprive the occupant of the benefit of a conventional eviction trial, a classic eviction proceeding. And it's something we can already see in France. There is many examples I can offer to you. Sometimes police doesn't care about the law. They come, they arrest the occupant, and they put them in custody. And during the custody time, they give a call to the owner, and they give back the building to the owner. But up to now, such kind of behavior of the police is completely illegal. But once you create an offense of squatting, and even if all the criteria of the offense are not met, police will be able to come to arrest the occupant, to put them in custody, and probably there will not be prosecution after that. But as long as the occupant are arrested, put in custody, and the building is returned to the owner, the main purpose of the police action is fulfilled. So they don't need for the owner to respect the law, to engage a real trial, and a trial where up to now in France, the occupants were allowed and able to show their own situation and maybe to convince a judge to give them some delay before the moment where the eviction, the action of the police to come and put the person on the street before it can happen. Probably because of my English, you may not have understood everything I wanted to tell you, but if you have any question, I feel free to ask, and I'll try to answer your question.
Thank you, Matteo. I think we got it very well, and this is international English as we used to speak it, and that's why we understand each other. The next speaker is Elie from the Union Solidaire, and Elie will speak in French because he doesn't feel comfortable in English, and Stella will translate.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry not to speak English as easily as the other persons here, but it will be easier for me in French. It's a language I speak better. Elie Lambert de l'Union syndicale solidaire, donc qui est un syndicat de travailleurs et de travailleuses donc français, qui considère que la lutte syndicale doit être fondée sur le rapport de force et surtout qui ne s'arrête pas aux portes de l'entreprise. Alors, je sais pas pour la traduction si je m'arrête là ou voilà.
Oui, je pense que c'est pas mal. Elie Lambert, he's part of the Union Solidaire. So it's a workers' union, and it's a workers' union that creates and that its main action and preoccupation is to create a power to react on the power relationship and also to go further than the work place and to also like to mobilize on other topics. Désolée Elie, je pense que je traduis pas super bien non plus, mais je vais faire dans
c'est très bien, j'ai pu tu traduis quand même pas trop et puis de toute façon, j'avais qu'à parler anglais, c'est tout. Non, oui, donc oui, le rapport de force, hein, pour nous, ça doit servir évidemment à transformer les rapports sociaux, les rapports de domination, et vraiment pour que on est au service de notre classe sociale. Et pour nous, il faut vraiment qu'on arrive à construire le rapport de force, et c'est toute la difficulté sur la thématique du logement.
Yes, so for us, this constructing, organizing the force power is the way that we act, and we also we want to use it, our power, to tackle domination relationships and like other topics, and this is the way that this is the main problem that we have, which means that we are struggling and we have difficult time to mobilize people and to create this rapport de force, this power. Does anyone have this rapport de force? I don't have it in English.
Power relation.
Yeah, to create, to organize together for the housing topic. So basically, this is one of the difficulties that they face in their union and more broadly in the other unions in France.
Donc oui, pour nous, pourtant, sans logement, il n'y a pas de vie sociale. Que vous travaillez ou non, hein, on connaît énormément de cas de travailleuses et de travailleurs qui vivent mal de leur travail, enfin de leur emploi sous-payé, conditions de travail désastreuses, et en plus, qui ne leur permet pas d'accéder à un logement décent, voire à un logement tout court. On a quand même beaucoup de travailleuses et de travailleurs sans-abri, donc qui travaillent et qui pourtant vivent dans des ensembles urbains notamment, qui ne leur permettent pas de se loger, et ils sont dans la rue et confrontés donc à sa violence.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So there can be social life without housing, and for workers, it's also it's a main topic, a main problematic. And we can see a lot of workers who can have jobs, but they still don't have houses, or they're living in very bad housing conditions. And that's why for unions, or at least in his opinion, housing, it's a very important topic to mobilize.
Pour nous, le logement doit être vraiment au cœur des mobilisations syndicales, et il faut absolument que les travailleurs et les travailleuses fassent le lien avec les luttes pour un meilleur logement, car évidemment, on a les rapports entre guillemets de force capitaliste qui jouent à plein, y compris sur ce sujet. Mais comme je le disais tout à l'heure, ça demeure compliqué, parce qu'en fait, pour beaucoup de nos syndiqués, voire non syndiqués, c'est pas de l'emploi, c'est pas vraiment du salaire, c'est entre guillemets, on l'évoque sous l'angle des charges, mais ce n'est pas pour eux un objet de lutte syndicale. Et c'est une vraie difficulté.
So as he mentioned before, for him, the housing topic is very important, also because this capitalistic relationships, they are also reflected in the housing topic and the main problems we find it also in the housing market. So it's very important to mobilize, but still, as you said, in the unions, for the people, for the workers who are part of unions, but also for the non-unionists, housing is kind of, it's not work, it's not the working field, and it's kind of perceived as an individual problematic and not a common one, and that we, at least a collective one, that we can deal with it collectively.
Voilà, alors que, bon, on a encore des secteurs professionnels où le logement social est une réalité. Hein. Mais ne serait-ce que pour lutter contre son démembrement, hein, sa vente au profit du secteur privé, au profit de la spéculation, on n'arrive pas à monter les rapports de force alors que les camarades, donc enfin que les salariés ou les fonctionnaires, enfin les travailleurs et les travailleuses en profitent. Donc c'est un vrai souci. En fait, globalement, la question du logement est abordée par eux de façon très individuelle, lors de permanences syndicales, où il faudrait traiter au cas par cas, alors que, évidemment, on le sait, tout ça est une dimension collective. Mais là, on a un effet cliquet qui fait qu'on n'y arrive pas, quoi.
Yes, and even though a big part of the workers, they are living in social housing, it's also very difficult to mobilize even in defense of social housing and in this context. For example, now we have very big attacks on privatization of public housing, and still for that it's very difficult to mobilize people, workers at least. And the topic of housing is treated during the union permanence, like the meetings, individual meetings that they have during like with unions, but never again, never in a collective way, and never part of the other demands of their mobilizations.
Donc en fait, ce rapport de force, hein, social, qui est clairement en notre défaveur, permet à des députés donc conservateurs, comme ceux de Renaissance, comme ceux de Macron, à proposer des lois type KASBARIAN. Et voire même, et c'est bien la preuve que le rapport de force nous est vraiment défavorable, et ça a été dit, il me semble, par Matteo, écorner au passage le droit de grève, hein, puisque l'occupation des locaux professionnels, commerciaux et agricoles est sanctionnée quasiment des mêmes peines que des squatteurs de logements vides.
So yes, the power relationship, it's for sure not in our favor, it's in our disadvantage in this period, and that's why these kind of laws are proposed from deputies of the center and back from the right and far right. And also, as Matteo mentioned before, it's not only about housing and tenants, but also it targets workers on strike, that they occupy their working place.
Et donc, alors, pour autant, je ne tiens pas à faire, à désespérer, comme on dit chez nous, Billancourt. Quand on voit le récent mouvement social, comme nous n'avons jamais vu en France depuis 50 ans, on se dit qu'il y a espoir. Et donc, à partir de là, il est évident qu'on continue à décrire, décortiquer donc, toutes les manœuvres et les manipulations du pouvoir donc, contre notre classe sociale. Et on espère que le 14 juin, les salariés dûment informés, puisqu'on les a quand même, n'arrête pas de leur balancer de l'information, du décryptage, voilà, viendront se mobiliser parce que c'est un des sujets majeurs de la lutte sociale et syndicale.
So yes, I don't want to be defeatist, and also the last movement we lived in France, this against the reform of pensions, gives us hope, and we still believe that this kind of movements could like go on, and also deal with other topics. So besides all these power maneuvers against our social class, we still continue to mobilize. We have called our people to mobilize in the 14th of June, because I don't know if we mentioned it, but the law will be discussed last time, the 14th of June, and probably voted, very probably voted. So yeah.
Très bien pour moi.
Et peut-être quelques mots sur la plateforme logement.
Ah, je n'ai pas préparé sur la plateforme logement plus particulièrement. Alors, évidemment, donc on essaie, dans le cadre d'une plateforme qui associe les associations de défense des intérêts des locataires, associations, on essaye aussi de mordre un peu sur les associations caritatives, mais c'est plus compliqué, ils n'ont pas tout à fait... Ils sont plus dans une démarche justement individuelle, alors que nous sommes, focalisés sur une démarche collective. On essaie donc justement de faire que les ponts se construisent entre diverses approches, voilà, et qui est vraiment sur ce point-là une communauté complètement d'intérêt, je dirais, déjà des organisations syndicales, elles ne sont pas toutes présentes, il n'y a que la CGT, la FSU et nous, et les organismes, enfin les associations de lutte pour les droits des travailleuses et des travailleurs. On a toute une plateforme revendicative, il est malheureusement trop long de la détailler ici, elle est d'ailleurs disponible donc sur le site, d'ailleurs on a un site, plateforme logement, je ne sais plus exactement son adresse, mais ça fait partie, on va dire, de l'attirail, voilà, parce qu'on sait très bien que seul on n'y arrivera pas, mais que c'est ensemble qu'on pourra vraiment construire le rapport de force, même si c'est long, voilà.
So yeah, even in this very complicated situation, there is still some attempts being done to bring together tenants associations with workers unions and other organizations. Also, there is this attempt, and there is what we call plateforme logement. It's like platform that gathers these kind of organizations. Not all the unions are there. There is CGT, which is one of the biggest unions, FSU, Solidaire, and qui d'autre? I forgot the third one. Or that's all. CGT, FSU, et Solidaire.
Au niveau syndicat, oui, tu n'as que la CGT.
Okay.
FSU,
only these three. And also these charity organizations, but which participate in this platform. But okay, as Ellie said, they have this individual approach, and we with the platform. So DAL is also part of it for sure. And yes, we are more in this approach of struggle and organizing collective actions. So yes, and the name is Plateforme Logement. So there is a site, there are different publications done from time to time. We won't go into details now, but yeah, it's kind of an attempt to do something together, but it's difficult.
Thank you, Ellie, and thanks for the translation. So the floor is open for your questions. If you have a direct question of clarification to one of the speakers, please say it in the beginning. But also, we would like to hear your comments or your additional contributions. And I suggest we collect 2-3 questions and we make a second round of the speakers. And Eva.
Yes, I had a question for Matteo, but first I want to say thank you very much for your interventions, because they were really interesting, three of you. So yes, I have a question for Matteo, who was saying in his presentation that to occupy an empty building was not considered as illegal in France, if I understood well. And I just wanted to make sure I understood well. And what does it mean about squatting in France until now? This is my question.
You understood well, and I understand it's not easy to understand me, but you understood very well. And as I told you, up to now, when it comes to rest on an empty building, criminal law doesn't care. Because if you are able to go inside of an empty building which is not securized, there is no security, you can go inside easily. The lawmaker always have considered that this is the responsibility of the owner. If he don't takes the time to really securize to prohibit the entry in the building, if it's his own responsibility, and it's a civil responsibility, because it's only about property. It's not about a criminal behavior. It's a breach to the property of the owner. So this kind of problem, only the judiciary can resolve it, and only the eviction proceeding can offer the owner the possibility to get back his empty building. But for us, it was a kind of humanity thinking about the homeless and people who has no other option than squatting. We in France always consider that if there is an empty building and you go inside easily, there is no door, there is no restriction, you can access the building without making any other offense to go inside. As long as it's only a problem of property, it's a civil problem. It's only related to the property. It's not a criminal behavior. But thanks to the propaganda that Stella has been talking about, these 2-3 last year, many main press organ or TV show very specific problem, and there is not so many problem like that, and there is a real propaganda. And finally, the lawmaker and wanted to offer to the right and also to the left, the very right, the ability to have in the criminal law an offense who offer the ability to the police force to come and to arrest people doing squat. So it's a real change in the way of thinking about we have to face homeless people who has any other option except that go in an empty building. Up to now, the French criminal law only say it's a problem only if you go in a place which is not empty. And it was okay for every one of us. As I told you, if I try to go in your apartment, in your flat, it's your intimacy, it's your place, the place you live, you have your own belongings, your clothes and things like that. And it seems to be normal that this is a criminal behavior. But when you go inside an empty and free building only to rest and to have something above your head for the night, that was not considered as a criminal behavior. And so with this new law, we changed the way we think about poverty and homeless people, and it's a real change in the French law. And also I would like, because I'm talking, but clarify a point that Ellie has been talking about. When it say that for worker organization there is concern about this new law, because the wording of the law also refers to the occupation of a place of activity. So there are concerns about the use of this new offense against workers occupying their factory, strike, and things like that. It's not only a problem of housing, it can also become a problem for all the worker organization anytime they will try to occupy the place they are working in.
Thank you. Anna, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining all of these details and complicated, sneaky ways in which they're trying to reduce people's rights. I had a question because in Portugal, we have a quite common situation, which is that people are renting, but they don't have a contract and they pay all their rent in money. And basically, normally, from what we've seen, when this gets to court, what the landlord says is that people were squatting, effectively. Like, this person was not my renter, this person was just occupying my apartment or my house. And sometimes it's even hard for the court to decide in their favor, even if a lot of neighbors testify that they saw them there every day and that there was no sign of forced entry or anything like that. And one thing I was wondering is, like, this change that you talked about, that the police can go in, like, how do you know if someone's squatting? Maybe this scenario I described is very uncommon in France, but in Portugal, I feel like, I mean, how do you know someone is squatting before you have started an eviction process?
You raised a very important concern we have, because we face the same kind of problem in France. There is many criminal landlords who give an apartment to rent, and who don't make a real contract with all the guarantee for the occupant. And up to now, as long as the building, the flat, was not the main residence of the owner, as I told you, it was not an offense. So if the owner, even if he allowed the occupant to stay inside and he did not make a real contract, if he wanted to get back his property, he had to engage a real trial, and he has to go in front of the judge. And in front of the judge, we in defense, as lawyer, we can use many things to prove that there is a real contract relationship between the owner and the occupant, even if there is no contract. But know that people cannot access the judge, because it will become an offense and police gonna be able to go inside, arrest the people. We will not see the judge, and the owner, when he want to get back the place, he will not have to introduce a claim in justice, and it will gonna become extremely difficult for us to make the proof that there is no contract, but still there is a relationship, a contract relationship. We don't need a document to have a contract relationship, and as long as the occupant pays rent, he is allowed to stay in the place. And the main problem is also related to something we call the vendeur de sommeil, the people who sell the sleep. I don't know how to translate in English. I think it's an idiomatic French expression, but we have many people who abuse of poor people who don't speak very well French, we don't very know their right and how to defend their right, and so all the time this kind of people they give a place to rent without the contract, and they also give the place, I'm not sure we can say it's a place, an apartment. It's sometimes a horrible place with 10, 20 people living in 20 meter. It's horrible, but the criminal politic in France is that we always prefer to defend the owner and not the occupant. So when it's come to go to the prosecution and say someone came to my firm and exposed me that he's living with 20 persons in an horrible place without a contract and things like that, the prosecution will not move a single finger. But when the owner will give a call to the police and will say there is a squat in my property, police will be here in 1 hour. So it was already very difficult to defend people without the contract living in horrible situation, and now it will gonna be impossible actually.
And also, if I can just add something, because we are speaking about workers and about people without contracts, and for example, there are a lot of, I'd say, situations where people live somewhere, but they don't have a contract. For example, you can have young people who live somewhere in colocation, in big houses, and not everybody is on the contract, and they are at risk. They are women, for example, that can be women or men, but also if we talk about feminist questions, that can be somewhere, and at one point, if someone decides them to call them squatters and to ask the police to throw them away, it will be more way more easier to do it. So it's a really general attack on the rights of a lot of people.
Okay, Anna, your question is answered. Oh, Matteo? No. Is there other questions? If not, I have a question to Ellie. I'm very interested about this platform for housing. I think in the coalition, the groups active had more in the past collaborations with people from the anti-racist movement when it comes to the question of housing of migrants or other discriminated minorities, like the Roma people housing question. And now the last year we come closer to the climate justice movement, but still it's very in a way very abstract, and it's always we discuss that it would be really nice if we get closer and combine our struggles and find some actions, but in practice it's really difficult. And I would like to ask you what would you tell us how we can, what would you expect from people, from persons, but also from the collectives in the housing movement? How can we get closer together?
Ok, so I will try to translate. So, donc c'est une question qui t'est posée à toi, Ellie. Donc la question c'est jusqu'à maintenant les mouvements pour le droit au logement s'en rapprochaient plus des mouvements antiracistes liés à la question des migrants aussi. Maintenant, ils sont de plus en plus, il y a des liens qui se créent avec le mouvement écologiste. Mais il y a encore des difficultés, et notamment avec le monde syndical et voilà, enfin les travailleurs. Et donc sa question c'est de savoir qu'est-ce qui peut être fait, quoi, comment les liens pourraient être créés, voilà, comment des rapprochements peuvent exister entre les deux mouvements.
C'est pas simple de répondre à cette question, parce que si on avait la solution, je pense que là, on ne serait pas en train de la chercher. Non, mais nous, en tout cas, là, pour le coup, je ne peux pas parler à la place de la CGT, d'autant qu'ils ont eu un congrès récemment qui a plutôt mis le frein à une certaine ouverture, justement, sur le monde associatif, écolo, voilà. Et ça, c'est un vrai souci, hein, pour tout vous dire. On a notamment le cadre AES, Alternative écologique et sociale, dans lequel la dimension du logement pourrait parfaitement s'intégrer, sauf que la CGT s'en est retirée. Donc, c'est une des complexités. Nous, ce qu'on pense, c'est que on est un syndicat dit de base. C'est-à-dire que ce que ça signifie, c'est que ce sont les salariés, entre guillemets, sont les travailleurs qui décident de leur lutte. Mais évidemment, notre rôle, c'est de les informer et de leur faire, entre guillemets, comprendre la réalité des rapports de force dans un monde largement capitaliste. Enfin bon, intégralement capitaliste, on va dire, quoi. Donc nous, c'est un peu là-dessus qu'on se base, hein. Mais ça, c'est au niveau de l'union syndicale. Après, il faut que chacun de nos syndicats, puisque l'union syndicale veut dire plusieurs syndicats, chacun de nos syndicats soit vraiment conscient de cela et aille vers des structures qui ne sont pas des organisations de travailleuses et de travailleurs, mais qui le sont en partie quand même, et pouvoir justement tisser des liens, tisser des luttes. Effectivement, tu évoquais des sans-papiers. Solidaire est quand même assez actif sur ces questions-là. L'idée, justement, c'est sans-papier, c'est de sortir de la problématique du papier, qui est une vraie cause de précarité, ça nous ne nions pas, mais d'aller sur les rapports d'exploitation. Et les rapports d'exploitation, c'est la précarité, hein, et c'est évidemment les questions de logement. On retrouve de toute façon à chaque fois les questions de logement. Mais il faut, voilà, c'est un travail, je dirais, de conviction, de rapports humains, quoi. Et pas forcément uniquement de rapports, je dirais, réseaux sociaux, quoi. Je suis pas forcément convaincu que les réseaux sociaux sont, voilà, on peut diffuser de l'information, mais c'est le rapport humain, la formation, ça sont des outils qu'on peut mettre à disposition de nos salariés, de nos syndiqués, et pour arriver justement à émanciper, en fait. Hein, c'est un travail d'émancipation, mais il faut dire que dans notre société, rien n'y engage, quoi. Voilà.
So,
Je suis désolé, c'était un peu long, mais
no,
la question est relativement
really
dense.
large.
Voilà, et j'ai pas la réponse forcément.
So it's very difficult to answer because we really don't have the answer, and if we had it, we wouldn't have been here, and we wouldn't have had all this problem to mobilize, even in a context of big social movement. Anyway, Ellie took the example of La CGT, which is the biggest French union, and which had their last Congress now recently. And in their Congress, there was how to say, they were even more closed to the networks of organizations and
je me permets juste de t'interrompre parce que je comprends quand même ce que tu dis. C'est qu'il faut souligner que le DAL fait partie de AES, donc de Alternative Écologique.
Mais c'est quoi l'AES, je voulais demander?
En fait, c'est le collectif initial qui s'appelait Plus Jamais Ça.
Ah oui, ok, d'accord.
De sortir de la période Covid et qui a changé en maintenant AES, Alternative Écologique et Sociale.
Écologie et
on a des syndicats solidaires. Donc on avait la CGT. Alors CGT, c'est important puisque c'est le premier entre guillemets syndicat. Voilà. On a la FSU, on a donc le DAL, on a surtout Greenpeace, on a Oxfam, on a les Amis de la Terre, on a toutes sortes justement de composantes qui permettent de faire des ponts. C'est le but. Et ça, c'est véritablement, pour nous, Solidaires, on a clairement mandat pour ça.
So yes, as I was saying, it's problematic because some big unions like La CGT, they are closing to these other social topics. So that's what has been voted in their last Congress, but also there is another big platform that, like the Platform Logement, but bigger, which is called Alternative Écologique et Sociale. So alternative, ecological, and social alternatives. And there is different working unions. DAL also is part of it. Greenpeace. So yeah, it's like gathering a lot of different unions and organizations. And this could be an example. And for the moment, it's not working in every time. And there is some, how to say, some, like some tendencies to be more close to the working topics from some unions, but attempts are being made. And for Eli, in his opinion, it's work that has to be done every day with workers because, unions are there to create conditions for social struggles, but also to discuss things and to create kind of consciousness. And it's a work that has to be done every day. and in the field, and not so much, not only to reduce it in the into the social media, but really to practice it every day. And as much as it as far as it concerns Solidaire, so his union, the union where he's participating, they have a real approach towards that, towards this opening to other questions. So yeah.
Okay.
C'est pas alternative, c'est alliance écologique et sociale. Excuse-moi. Mais bon,
It's not alternative, it's alliance.
Je vais mettre le site dans le chat.
Yes, and he will send us the link to the chat.
Super. Anna.
Sorry, if anyone else has any, I have already gone, but no. I was just going to ask again, maybe from Matteo, if there is any clarity in the law right now as to what is considered, the last piece you talked about, what is considered aiding the act of squatting or something like this. And I was thinking about this in terms of like a lot of us in the EAC, we have anti-eviction actions, and we try to support people who are being evicted and so on. So whether they are squatting or they might be, let's say, undocumented renters or things like this. And yeah, what under this law for the French comrades, what could be considered like aiding squatting?
Actually, it's not when it comes to give advice about how to face an eviction. The wording of the law is when it comes to give advice on how to commit the offense, the new offense of squatting. And the reason why the lawmaker has introduced in the law this new offense is because there were 1 or 2 years ago a TV show who has been talking about a book you can find online on how to squat, with all the explanation on how to force a place to go inside, how to defend itself when the police come, to explain you've been living here since more than 2 days, so now you can say it's your home, your place, all the aspect of how to be a good squatter. And the lawmaker wanted to make an announcement effect, and he wanted to say, look, now there is a new offense, and people who offer this kind of advice on how to squat, now this person will be prosecuted and they will face a huge amende. The word a huge fine. I'm sorry. But our concern is that when the lawmaker wrote these nuance, he said that people will give new offense of squatting, but there is a real risk that many organizations will give helps to people facing eviction, squatting, and things like that. There is a risk that government or prosecution use this new offense against the organization they don't like, actually. In France, on parle de procédure Bayon. Je ne sais pas comment traduire. I don't know how to translate that, but they can prosecute on the basis of this new offense in order to afraid the organization or the association, and to push the message that if you continue to help poor people, people with no housing solution, and people who has no other choice than to go and squat, you will also face prosecution and you will have to pay. So many association organizations are concerned about this new offense, but in my opinion, the prosecution will not use this new offense. It's only an announcement effect, but I don't know how the future will be, but I think it's gonna be very, very difficult for the prosecution to prove that an organization or an association gave the advice used by the occupant to make the squat, to go inside, to commit the offense. It's really a political offense to afraid people working on this field, helping people facing trouble with housing. Not sure I'm clear, but if you have any other cool.
Very clear, thank you. Eva, and after Laurent.
I'm sorry, but I have to leave.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, Eddie.
See you next time.
Thank you, Ellie.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe. Okay, thank you for this. I just wanted to say that first of all, we have a lot of messages in the coalition of more and more persecution from the police against groups that fight against evictions, and that we are seeing in many countries of Europe a rise in the criminalization or the persecution of activists for housing defense. And I think it's very problematic. One of the things we received as a message 2 days ago was from Serbia, Belgrade, where they were arrested in 2 consecutive actions they did against evictions for trying to help people keep in their house and not be in the streets. And this is very problematic, and I think we have to consider that France marks a very big moment now against squatting, but against in general the right to housing, as you all explained. But that this tendency we can see in many countries, and that what is particular to me in France is at this moment is that this law is so huge, and it comes at one moment where all countries want to tend to this criminalization and persecution, and that France makes this law like a symbol that this can happen, and maybe more countries will adopt this kind of laws later. So I think it's very important to say it in this event, that there is this kind of tendency everywhere, but this law is particular, and we have to fight it, not only for solidarity to France, but also because it's a general tendency in Europe, and because it's very problematic. So this was one thing I wanted to say about Belgrade. If I think about Athens, for example, where I struggle these days, I'm thinking about our comrades from Stop Auctions group that are doing a great job fighting against evictions of people who cannot afford anymore to pay their debts. So maybe a debt is not the same as a rent for you in your minds, but in Greece, it's almost what is happening, that people, because there is not a huge rental market, people are mostly owners, so repaying their debt, it's not especially a mortgage debt, but other kinds of debt, is a way to pay for housing, you know. And I'm thinking about these 30,000 people who are now in a situation in Athens where they are threatened with eviction, to be considered as criminals. And this it doesn't happen now, but if there was to apply the same law as in France, in Greece, it would have happened that these 30,000 people would be considered as criminals. And when I think about it, it makes me really angry. So one last thing is that this is why I really like that people from the coalition decided to and we all, at the end, decided to call for actions until the 14th of June in front of French embassies. But if it's not possible, in front of French embassies anywhere, because I think we should really consider this moment as crucial. And then I'm inviting really all the groups who listen to this webinar to take action against this law.
Thank you, Eva. It was not a direct question, I guess. So it's Laurent.
Yeah, very quickly, because I have to leave. I wanted to say that, of course, I perfectly agree with all what has been said. And on top of that, you have to know that in Belgium, it's exactly the same situation. We had 2 anti-squat law. The second one, as far as I understood, is applied since 6 months, more or less, and it's exactly the same situation as in France. The only difference, as I understood, but I'm not a lawyer, is that it does not mention this criminalization of the help of association. But Matteo, you said that it was just a way of speaking. But about the criminalization of squatter, it's exactly the same thing, with the same kind of fine and possibility of to be condemned to prison. So understood what you said, Eva, is that the call for action is on June the 14th, if I understood correctly. Yeah.
Before June the 14th. So there were already 2 actions in Stockholm and Germany. We have until the 14th to take action.
But there is no special moment. But before that, because I see Stella will answer to that. If there is a special moment, because we mentioned it at the Syndicat des Immenses, and since we are facing exactly the same law in Belgium for 1 year at least now, we are totally on the same line. And the second thing what was mentioned is that this what about, it's a big proposition, but I don't think it will be accepted, but to on top of the Housing Action Day, to have 2 other big European annual meetings, which would be anti-eviction day and anti-gentrification day, because this the housing problematic is so complex and it goes in so many directions. Is it not a good idea to have a Housing Action Day and anti-eviction day, anti-gentrification day? That's our proposition. But before leaving, I would like Stella to tell us what you really recommend in terms of what the best moment for you if something must happen.
Now. No, really, it's better if you do something before the 14th, because on the 14th, the law will be discussed on the Senate and voted. So yeah, it's really better for us and for the coalition. It will be really good, like, okay, I'm thinking now the webinar will be published, but it will be really good also to make our campaign visible in media of the coalition, our media in France, to say that there is actually a European mobilization against the KASBARIAN law. So yes, so for what is about the action, yeah, it's good if you do it before the 14th. If you manage to do something in front of the embassy, it's good, it's very symbolic and it's nice. If not, it's good also like the actions that have already been done with banners. So yeah, actually I also raised the hand to speak about that and to call for other groups if they can support. It's very important, and to go in the same direction as Eva, that about these repressive tendencies that we see also in other countries. Also, I'd like to speak to ask to people who are here, but also people who will see the webinar later, to tell us if they are other laws similar or even discussions. We had, someone told me, but I don't know if it's at all true, that some discussions about a similar law are going on in Spain. I don't know if something is happening, but for example, if this exists in Belgium, it's very important to share it and to make this common campaign. And yeah, and about the repression, for example, in France, we are, this is very general about different movements, not only housing movements. For example, 2 or 3 days ago, there have been very, very big repression on ecological activists close to Soulèvement de la Terre. For sure you have heard about it because we also discussed it in the coalition. So there was an action going on, and now in the last days, police has been going in different places, also in squads, and doing these perquisitions and arresting people, but in a very violent way. And as what I, if I'm right, also repression was going on in Germany against ecological movement, and yeah, and it's very important to have this this solidarity in different countries. I mean, it's totally the result of this authoritarian government that we have everywhere. So it's generalized, and I really believe that we can strengthen ourselves by these solidarity movements in European level. So yeah, anyway, for me, it was only to, first of all, to ask people to do some actions if it's possible. Second, to try to make them visible and to communicate in the media. And third, I forgot, I already, yeah, and to have some feedback of what is going on in other countries. Yeah.
Thank you, Stella. Matteo, you have anything to add?
No, it's true that in France, in public opinion, there is this idea that squat is the house of very dangerous left-thinking people about to commit a crime against the state, and also it's true that this last year and weeks also many squat has been faced search and seizure, police coming inside to look for evidence, proof of the commission of an offense, and sometime when it comes to the criminal trial, when people in defense has to say, where do you live? I'm living in the squat. Sometime for the judge, it can be one proof, one evidence of the commission of the offense. So it's sometime in the public opinion and even in the opinion of the judge, very important to say that squat is mainly a problem about housing, and it has no relation with the commission, with another offense, and especially when it comes to far left. But the very last point I would like to add.
And Stella, maybe you can add a bit, what is your program for the next week? You will mobilize again?
Yes, we will try. Yes, we are going to organize a demonstration on the 14th in front of a gathering and a demonstration also in front of the Senate, where the law will be discussed. Yes, and in the next days we are going to, we are not organizing something special, but just trying to mobilize to people to speak about that, to speak in the media, and yeah. But okay, it's still, that's why for us also it will help us a lot, this European movement, because now in France the public opinion is so focused on still on the reform of the pensions and also other laws. Like there are a lot of yeah, terrible laws going on and being voted. So yes.
So I think we are perfectly in time to finish this webinar. Thank you to all the speakers, and also thank you to Chenge from our communication team who's doing the technical support. Eva, you have something to say?
No, Bernardo has something to say. Sorry.
I didn't see it, sorry.
Hi, thank you. And I'm sorry because I just leave work like 30 minutes ago. So I was listening in my way home, and I have a question that maybe you already answered during the first part of the presentation that I lost. But is like the squatting that is happening in France, if it's more like individual people occupying houses, or if it's more like organizing collectively, like a bunch of people that need a house and goes and occupies, and it's from the beginning a political question, and also like a question of need of housing, but also organized in a political way. I'm putting this question because here in Portugal we have a lot of squatting of public housing that is vacant, but in general people are not they are not organized doing that, and in a way we have a lot of people coming to us with problems that we cannot give answer to. Like the only answer possible is we have houses, we have these places, and you can go here. And like to think about that, and in a way, like just for the experience of France that I don't know, but for example, in Brazil, I know that that's the way they make it. Like they get people together first. They choose the building, and then they do a squat, like, but in mass already, like 30 people living there from day one with lawyers, a team of lawyers prepared to give answer, and they get support from a law that I don't know if it exists, if it happens in France, but in Portugal it exists. That is like property that is it's no longer fulfilling their social use, like being used for housing or other things, should be used. And like movements like MTST and use this kind of law and the debts that they own to the finance department to reclaim that land for them. And my question is, if the movement of squatting in France, it's this kind of organization, like a lot of people together with organizations doing more than a thing of need of housing, also a thing of a question of the political, or if it's just like people in need that occupy, and then the movements try to help them be there the most time possible. Thank you.
I guess I was gonna be the one. I will try to answer your question. There is both. There are both situation in France. There is many people who come to squat because they have any other option and they have to find a place to live. But there is also many people who are squatting in a political way, because as you probably know, in France we have more than 3 million of empty buildings on the whole territory. So there is many people who don't want to pay a huge rent, who don't want to make it with money, and who only look for a place where they can make artistic creation or open the place and offer a place to live for many people in the street. There is many political squats, and there is also place where people gather in to sing, to act, to organize a demonstration. And this last place are the more problematic for the police, as you probably understand, and they are the more difficult to defend. But each time I go with a group with about to squat, we always prepare it, and there is always lawyer going with the people opening the squat, and we try to do it in a political way and to claim that there is too many empty buildings in France to let them free and not used. And so I guess there is the two main type of squat in France also, for living and to use it because there is too many empty buildings. Not sure I answered all your questions.
Yes, I would like just to add something. I agree with what you said, Matteo. I think there is different kind of squatting. There are people who are squatting individually, also a lot of people who are organized. There is squats where people live, so they are opened in the objective to find how to say, to give a shelter, to organize a shelter for people who don't have house, but also artistic squats, so opened more for artistic activity. I have the impression that in the last years, especially in Paris and the neighbors of Paris, in the suburbs of Paris, a lot of squats have been closed. I mean, these organized squats and political squats. And still, I don't have statistics, but from my experience, because also in Paris and in the suburbs, there is a strong pressure, I mean, about housing and development. First of all, squats with people living in has been attacked and evicted. And also now more and more also the artistic squats, who are the most, let's say, tolerated ones. And also for example, for an organization as DAL, one of the main way of action of DAL is squatting, but squatting not in the way of occupying a place to create, not only in this way to occupy a place and create like an alternative way of organizing and living together, but in a very demanding, revendicative, I don't know if it's English way. So for DAL, in DAL, we occupy empty buildings because, as Matteo said, there is a lot of too much empty buildings, and we occupy them in an organized way, and we demand from the state and public actors to find solution for people who don't have housing. So this has been one of the main ways of organizing and actions of DAL. And for us also, this is very the situation of now, and what this law is creating. It's very problematic, and it will have big consequences for our way of organizing. So that's all.
To give an example, 3 years ago, the association DAL they began squatting of an old police station in the center of Paris. The political message was amazing. We came to take a place where police force were working, a public building, and we are here to claim for housing for every people living in the squat. And DAL succeed. We've been defending in the trial and in front of the judge also. But at the end of the bargaining with the City Council of Paris and the government, DAL succeed to obtain an agreement with the authority for the housing of the 30 or 40 family who were living in the squat. So sometimes we have association or organization who don't need to squat. but we see the squat as a political tool to claim something or to strike on something or to fight for something, and that was amazing and that was something very effective. But now with this new law, if Dal wanted to do it again, to squat, for instance, an empty police station in the center of Paris, Dal will have to face prosecution and they will probably be sentenced at the very end of the proceeding. The first time will probably not be something like 2 months of jail with no effectivity, but the next time it's gonna be higher and higher, and at the very end there is a real risk of jail, of imprisonment for people acting and using squat as a political tool to claim something.
Thank you. Bernardo, your questions are answered?
Yes, but I have other questions now with the answer, but there's no time.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I can, okay, nice. My question is, for the organization of the squat, how do you do it basically? How do you choose the building? How do you, like, is there are people are coming to you because they know you are organizing that, and like you make a list of people that can join that squad, and how do people organize inside, and what's the experience in that field?
Okay, so I will try to answer. So I will just speak about DAL and not about not about the other squads. Okay, how we find the building and how we organize. I won't go into details because this webinar will be public, so we won't say everything. But we just identify empty buildings, and then we try to we organize actions to occupy them. So I won't go anymore in other details. And about people who are occupying, DAL is an organization, organizing actions. I mean, it's not people are coming because they have problems of housing, and we are discussing together and providing some help and suggestions about what they can do about the administrative path. But it's mainly a political organization in the way that we also like the main way is to organize actions, political actions. And one of the most important action is this occupying buildings and claiming for people to have a house. And it goes like that. People are joining because DAL is kind of well known in France, and people who don't have a house, because different kind of problems can appear. Like people can have different kind of problems. Some of them live in bad conditions, and some of them are tenants, but some of them they don't have house. And with those people, we decide to do these actions. So yeah, it's decided in a collective way. We organize assemblies, and we are always helped and accompanied by lawyers. I don't know, maybe Matteo, you have something to add?
No, I think you can talk without risk, because there is no retroactivity of criminal law. So up to now, there is no offense about giving help on how to squatting. But quickly answer your question, Bernardo, I guess it's the same in other countries. You have to be prepared, and the best is prepare it with a lawyer specialized in such field of law. You have to choose the building very carefully. You have to be sure the owner of the building is not an individual. It's better to choose a building belonging to a huge company, or the best is a public building. You have to be very clear with the people who come to you, to say that when they have to go inside of the building, it cannot let any trace, any proof of breaking and entering. You have to be able during the proceeding to say to the judge, look, the building was empty and it was wide open. I didn't have to break the entry to go inside, because if the owner is able to prove that you did so, the delay the judge can give you are shorter. Then you have to be very clear with the police. Sometimes with the people I'm going with, when they open a squat, we put on the door a paper with a remember of the law and the fundamental right of housing. And then you have to prepare the hearing, the trial, and gather many proof of quiet use of the building, of your own situation, the trouble you have to find a place where you can live because you don't have enough money to pay the rent. And then at the very end of the proceeding, when it comes to defend in front of the judge, you have to convince him that there is no need for the owner to get back immediately the building, but there is a real need for the people inside of the building to stay as long as possible, because they have no other option. It's always European law who say that judge has to find the equilibrium, the just middle between the need of the owner and the need of the occupant. So that's how we prepare and defend a squat. But if you want, there is online a book explaining everything.
Maybe
How
you
is
can
it
send
called,
the
the
name.
book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the chat maybe, or and also for example, sometimes or at least a lot of times the judge or the other parties they can attack squatters on the condition of the building. So it's also important to be attentive on which kind of building you are squatting, and that the conditions the physical conditions are right for housing, even though it's not always good, but it can be also an argument of attacking and saying, okay, but you can't provide proper and decent conditions of staying there for people because it's dangerous, or because
Thank you.
Is there other questions or additional contributions? I don't see. So thank you again to all the speakers, all the contributions. Thank you again, Cenga, for the technical support. It would be nice if you could collect the links from the chat before we close. And yes, to remind again, don't forget to stop KASBARIAN law this week. Do your action. You find on our website the call. In the call is a link where you can find all the French embassies and consulates all over Europe, no, all over the world actually. But as the comrades mentioned, you can do your banner with your group, or you just make a very intelligent sign and make a picture and send it in your social media. And see you in the next webinar of the EAC or in the streets, hopefully. Thank you. Goodbye.